My ex used my depression as a punchline to friends, so I shared her messages, watched her get fired, and blocked her before she could explain him. A 26-year-old guy, and for most of my life, I've carried depression like an invisible weight chained to my chest. It wasn't something I advertised, but it was always there lurking in the background, turning everyday moments into uphill battles. I had years of silent struggle, sitting in therapists' offices trying to put into words the fog inside my head. Some days I managed, some days I barely functioned. Dating, for me, always came with this hidden question. Will they stay when they see this side of me? Or will they leave the second it becomes too heavy? When I met her, I thought I finally had my answer. She was warm, funny, and carried herself like someone who truly got people. On our second date, I told her hesitant, fumbling that I dealt with depression. She squeezed my hand across the table and whispered, "You don't ever have to hide from me. I'll always have your back." Those words felt like sunlight piercing through storm clouds. For the first time in years, I let myself breathe. I started to believe her. She came with me to a therapy session once, waiting outside with coffee. She texted me late at night, "You're not alone in this. I promise." She made me feel like I was safe, like I could be vulnerable without paying the price later. That kind of trust is rare for someone like me, and I clung to it. But what I didn't know then was that promises are easy to make when everything is light and romantic. The real test comes when life gets messy, when loyalty means more than words, and slowly, painfully, I would come to learn that the same woman who promised to stand by me would later take that same vulnerability and twist it into a cruel punchline. And once the laughing started, it didn't stop. The first cracks didn't come as explosions, they came as whispers. Disguised as teasing, I remember canceling dinner plans one night because my head felt like it was caving in. I texted her, apologizing, saying, "I just don't think I can handle people tonight." When she came over the next day, she smirked and said in front of her roommate, "Guess someone was too busy crying in bed to eat tacos." They laughed. I forced a smile, but inside, it burned. I told myself it was nothing. Couples joke. Maybe I was just being sensitive. But it kept happening. Anytime I needed a break, anytime my depression showed its face, she had a way of twisting it into a one-liner. "Don't piss him off," she'd say. At a gathering, he might spiral again. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, but my stomach knotted tighter each time. At family dinners, she'd roll her eyes if I got quiet and tell my mom, "He's just being dramatic again." My mom chuckled politely, but I could feel the heat rising in my face. These weren't private jabs. They were public performances. I was being turned into a caricature of the moody boyfriend, and she played it like a role in a comedy skit. The worst part, I convinced myself she didn't mean it. I kept replaying those early promises, how she said she'd never let me feel alone. Maybe this was just her awkward way of handling things. Maybe if I explained it better, she'd understand. But every time her words echoed in a room full of laughter, something inside me cracked a little deeper. I swallowed my anger, buried my embarrassment, and told myself it was just a phase. Looking back now, I realized the truth was staring me in the face. Her jokes weren't jokes at all. They were test sand. I kept failing them. It started small, but soon her jokes became sharper, louder, harder to brush off. What once sounded like teasing began to feel like a script she enjoyed performing. At dinner with friends, she leaned across the table and said, "Careful what you say, he might need a therapy session after this." Everyone laughed. I sat frozen, pushing food around my plate, my cheeks burning as though a spotlight had been placed directly on me. The worst part was the way she looked at me when she said it, smirking, waiting for me to play along, like my pain was her favorite punchline. "Don't upset him, he might spiral," she'd add with a wink, as if she was protecting me. But she wasn't protecting me. She was humiliating me. I tried to fight the rising shame. I told myself, maybe I really am too sensitive. Maybe this is how normal couples joke. But the more I tried to rationalize, the more isolated I felt. Depression already makes you feel like an outsider in your own life, and she had found a way to weaponize that. One night, I overheard her talking on the phone in the kitchen. She didn't see me standing in the hallway. "Yeah, he gets all moody and dramatic," she said, laughing. Honestly, I just let him sulk until he snaps out of it. The casual cruelty in her voice gutted me. That wasn't a joke. There was no audience, no need for performance. That was how she really saw me. I stood there in silence, my chest heavy, listening to her laugh about me like I was some burden she was stuck with. And for the first time, I couldn't convince myself it was harmless. Something darker was happening, and I couldn't escape the feeling that I was losing pieces of myself every time. She opened her mouth the night it all broke open is seared into my memory. We were at a friend's house, party music low, people clustered on couches, drinks in hand. I'd just come back from stepping outside to get some air when I heard her voice cutting through the noise. She was standing in the center of the room, laughing, retelling one of my lowest moments like it was a stand-up routine. And then he texted me. All panicked, like I can't breathe. "I feel like I'm dying," she said, clutching her chest dramatically. The room erupted in laughter. She wasn't just mocking me, she was mocking my panic attacks, my therapy sessions. The nights I thought I wouldn't make it through, my body froze. My ears rang as the laughter bounced around me, louder and louder, until it felt like I was underwater. My throat tightened, my hands went numb. I tried to move, to speak, but I couldn't. I just stood there, invisible in a room full of people who were laughing at my suffering like it was entertainment. She caught my eye mid-performance, and for a second, her smirk faltered. But she didn't stop. She doubled down, mimicking my shaky voice. "Please, just talk to me. I don't want to feel alone." The crowd howled. My deepest vulnerability, the thing I trusted her with most, had become her party trick. Something inside me shattered. I felt stripped bare, like every ounce of trust I'd given her had been set on fire right there in that living room that night. Lying awake in bed next to her, while she scrolled her phone like nothing had happened, I made a silent promise to myself. I couldn't keep pretending this was okay. And for the first time, I started thinking about what it would mean to fight back. The morning after that party, I couldn't hold it in anymore. My chest felt like it was caving in, the humiliation replaying in loops. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, my coffee untouched, and said quietly, "Why do you do that? Why do you turn my depression into a joke for everyone else?" She looked up from her phone, eyes narrowing like I had just accused her of a crime. "Oh my God, are we seriously doing this right now?" she groaned, rolling her eyes. "It's just jokes. You really need to stop being so sensitive." Her words landed like a slap. Just jokes. That's all my pain was to Hirsch material for a laugh. My throat tightened. "It's not funny to me," I managed, voice trembling. "It's humiliating. Do you have any idea what it feels like to hear you mock me like that?" She slammed her mug down, the sound sharp against the wood. "You're overreacting. If you can't take a joke, maybe you're not boyfriend material." Her tone was dismissive, final, as if the problem wasn't her cruelty, but my inability to laugh along with it. Inside, I felt myself splitting in two. One part of me wanted to scream, to stand up and finally demand the respect I deserved. The other part, beaten down by years of depression and self-doubt, whispered that maybe she was right. Maybe I was the one who couldn't handle normal. I stared at her, searching for even a flicker of remorse, but all I saw was impatience. She picked up her phone again like the conversation was already over, and in that moment, something inside me shifted. I realized I wasn't just fighting her words, I was fighting for the last scraps of my dignity. A few weeks later, the truth hit me harder than anything she'd ever said to my face. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, when a notification popped up from a mutual friend. It was a screenshot in my girlfriend's group chat with her close friends. At first, I didn't understand why it was sent to me. Then I opened it. There it was, line after line of my private messages turned into a cruel comedy routine. My late-night texts about panic attacks, posted with laughing emojis. My vulnerable confessions about feeling worthless, rewritten as memes. And at the center of it all was her, leading the charge, mocking me to the very people she claimed were just her girls. My stomach twisted. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the phone. I read her words again and again, each one carving deeper. "He cried again tonight. Honestly, it's pathetic." Another message. At this point, I should start charging him for therapy. The group responded with LMAO and crying laughing faces. It wasn't teasing anymore. It wasn't even ignorance. It was betrayal, premeditated, deliberate, cruel. The person I trusted most had not only mocked me in private, but turned my pain into entertainment for an audience. I confronted the friend who sent me the screenshot, and she whispered, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. It was too much. My chest tightened with equal parts rage and heartbreak. Everything I'd tried to excuse, every red flag I'd waved away, had been leading to this. That night, as I stared at the ceiling in the dark, my heartbreak transformed into something new. It wasn't just pain anymore, it was rage, sharp and blinding, burning in my chest like fire. And for the first time, I thought, if she could make me into a joke, maybe I could turn the tables. After seeing those screenshots, something inside me collapsed. I stopped eating properly meals, sat cold on the counter until I threw them away untouched. Nights blurred into mornings as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every cruel word she'd ever said. I didn't just feel hurt. I felt hollow, like every ounce of trust I'd ever given had been ripped out of me. My phone buzzed constantly with her texts and calls, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Even the sound of her name lighting up my screen made my chest tighten. Depression has a way of convincing you that you deserve the pain you're in, and her laughter, her betrayal cemented that lie. I started to believe maybe I really was pathetic. Maybe I really was just a burden. The world outside felt muted. I let unread messages from friends pile up, avoided family calls, and sank deeper into silence. My apartment became a cave of shadows, curtains drawn, clothes scattered, air heavy with the scent of neglect. I caught my reflection once in the bathroom mirror. Hollow eyes, cracked lips, an unrecognizable version of me staring back. I thought about all the years I'd spent fighting to stay afloat, all the progress I'd made in therapy, and how quickly she'd unraveled it. The lowest moment came when I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, scrolling through those screenshots again and again until the words blurred. I whispered to myself, maybe no one will ever take me seriously. Maybe this is all I'll ever be. But then, as my thumb hovered over the screen, something jolted me awake. Buried in those screenshots was more than cruelty, was recklessness. The jokes weren't just about me. They crossed a line that could ruin her far worse than she had ruined me. And that's when a dangerous thought sparked. Her words weren't just cruel. They were evidence. The shift from despair to determination was almost frightening. For weeks, I had let her laughter eat away at me. But staring at those screenshots again, I realized something. Her cruelty wasn't just personal, it was reckless, public, and dangerous. She hadn't just mocked me. She had done it in a group chat that included coworkers. Even joking about her clients at work, in the same breath, she ridiculed my depression. I sat at my desk, lit only by the glow of my laptop, scrolling through every conversation I could find. My fingers shook as I screenshotted each message, careful to include names, timestamps, proof. It felt like digging through a graveyard of my own humiliation. But with each capture, my rage steadied into purpose. I whispered to myself, if she can laugh at my pain, I can make her live with the consequences. Saying it out loud sent chills down my spine. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was reclaiming something she thought she'd stolen forever, my dignity. The more I compiled, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't playful teasing. It was workplace harassment, violation of confidentiality, a complete mask-off moment. And for once, the power wasn't in her hands. It was in mine. I drafted an email to her company's HR department, attaching everything, every cruel joke, every mocking meme, every line where she blurred personal betrayal with professional misconduct. My cursor hovered over send for what felt like an eternity. My heart pounded so hard it shook my chest, sweat prickling my neck. But then I thought about that party, about the way her friends had laughed at my panic attacks, about her dismissing me as too sensitive, and suddenly, pressing that button didn't feel scary anymore. It felt like justice. With one final breath, I clicked send. The days after I sent that email felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to see if the ground would crumble or hold. At first, nothing happened. She still texted me like normal, half-sweet, half-dismissive S, if the world hadn't just shifted beneath her feet. But then, slowly, the cracks began to show. She stopped posting her usual funny stories online. Her tone in texts grew frantic, desperate. And then I heard from a mutual friend who worked at the same place. HR had called her in. Someone had reported inappropriate conduct, and the screenshots were circulating. She wasn't laughing anymore. I imagined her sitting there, forced to explain why mocking mental illness in a professional group chat was acceptable. I pictured the smug grin wiped off her face as her own words were read back to her. For once, the shame wasn't mine to carry, it was hers. Word spread quickly. Colleagues who once laughed at her jokes now kept their distance. Her carefully built image of being the fun, witty one shattered overnight. She texted me relentlessly, "We need to talk. Why are you doing this to me? Please, just let me explain." Every buzz of my phone was like an echo of power I'd never felt before. For so long, she'd controlled the narrative, turning me into the punchline. Now, the roles had flipped. And as much as part of me felt a flicker of guilt, another part, the part that remembered standing frozen at that party while everyone laughed at my panu, this was the only justice I would ever get, for once. She was the one exposed. She was the one left scrambling, while I finally breathed freely. The night she showed up at my apartment, it was pouring rain. I remember the sound of her fists pounding on my door, muffled between the thunder and her voice breaking through. "Open up. You ruined my life over a joke." My stomach churned, but for once, I didn't feel powerless. I stood in the hallway, just staring at the door. My phone buzzed, nonstop calls, texts, voicemails stacking up. Each one shifted from anger to desperation. "Please, just let me explain. Please." Her voice cracked in one of the recordings, and for a moment, a flicker of the old me, the one who always wanted to fix, to comfort, tried to push through. But then I remembered the party, the laughter, the screenshots, the way she had turned my darkest moments into cheap comedy when the pounding stopped. I finally looked down at my phone. Her name lit up the screen again. I answered, just once. Her voice was sharp, almost venomous. "You think you're better than me now? You think you're some kind of hero? You're pathetic." I didn't shout back. I didn't defend myself. I just let the silence stretch until she started to panic. "Wait, no, I didn't mean that. Please, you have to believe me. I didn't know how to handle you." Her words tumbled over each other, excuses and half apologies wrapped in desperation. But I realized something in that moment. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry for what she lost. My thumb hovered over the screen, and for the first time in months, I felt in control. I whispered, "I don't owe you anything." Then I pressed the button. Her voice cut off mid-sentence as I blocked her. The silence that followed was the loudest relief I'd ever known. The days after, blocking her felt strangely quiet, like stepping out of a storm and realizing the world is still standing. For the first time in a long time, my phone was silent, not buzzing with insults, not lighting up with desperate apologies, just stillness. And in that stillness, I started to hear something I hadn't in months. My own voice. At first, I didn't know what to do with it. Depression has a way of filling the silence with lies. You're weak. You're unlovable. You're broken. But this time, those voices didn't feel as strong. Every time they rose up, I reminded myself of what I had done. I stood up for myself. I took back the story she tried to twist. I reached out to the friends I had been ignoring. One came over with takeout and just sat with me, no questions asked. Another texted, "Proud of you, man." Their words felt foreign at first, but slowly they began to sink in. I wasn't as alone as she made me believe. Therapy sessions stopped being about surviving her and started being about rebuilding me. I told my therapist everything: how I let her laugh at me, how I believed I deserved it, how it almost broke me. And my therapist said something I'll never forget. "Her laughter doesn't define you. Your strength does." For weeks, I carried that sentence like armor. Little by little, I started reclaiming the things she mocked me for. I journaled again. I ran in the mornings, even when my chest ached. I allowed myself to cry without shame. Her laughter used to echo in my head like a curse. Now, it was just noise in the background of a life I was finally taking back. And for the first time, I believed that healing was possible. I'm a 26-year-old guy, and for the longest time, I thought my depression would always make me the joke. I thought I'd always be the weak one in the room, the one people whispered about, the one who had to apologize for being too much. But looking back now, I realized the joke was never on me. It was on her, on the woman who mistook cruelty for humor, betrayal for intimacy, and humiliation for love. She tried to turn my darkest moments into punchlines, But in the end, it was her own words that destroyed her. She laughed at me, but I was the one who had the last word without ever raising my voice. Watching her scramble, watching her face consequences, was never about revenge alone. It was about reclaiming the dignity she thought she could strip away. And maybe that's what healing looks like. Not forgetting, not pretending it never happened, but standing in the wreckage and saying, I survived this. I am stronger than what was done to me. These days, I don't waste energy replaying her laughter. Instead, I focus on the quiet victories the morning I woke up and didn't dread the day. The text from a friend that reminded me I matter. The small moments of peace I'd once thought were impossible. That's what survival feels like. That's what freedom feels like. If you're listening to this and you've ever been mocked for your pain, dismissed for your struggles, or laughed at when all you wanted was to be understood, I want you to know something. Their laughter doesn't define you. Their cruelty doesn't diminish you. You are still here, and that means you're already stronger than they ever gave you credit for. So yeah, I thought my depression would always make me the punchline. Turns out, the punchline was hers to carry, not mine. Would you have done the same if you were me?